At the time of recording, Monster Hunter Wilds is 1 week away. So, while all the hype is building, I thought I would go over some of my advice that I would have to anyone that's new to the Monster Hunter series, which I know there's a million of these videos right now, but maybe one of the things that I talk about will be helpful to you in a particular way. First of all, I want to warn you that Monster Hunter is not an easy game. Wilds may end up being the easiest Monster Hunter game, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a low challenge game in the slightest. It takes time to learn the mechanics and figure out how to progress past certain points of the game, and then after you beat the story, which not everyone makes it there, you then get these really hard post-game fights that test your skills even further. And while I wouldn't say it's the difficulty of Elden Ring, Monster Hunter does have its own type of challenge to it, because fights tend to take a lot longer in Monster Hunter than they do in, say, Dark Souls. Another thing you'll need to keep in mind is Monster Hunter typically has terrible menus that are really bad at explaining what to do. Sometimes even I get lost on Monster Hunter menus, and I have over 500 hours in Monster Hunter games. They're just bad, and they always will be. So that is one of the issues of Monster Hunter games that you're just gonna have to learn to accept, because apparently they don't know how to fix it. Now, Monster Hunter has 14 different weapons to choose from. All of them have very different playstyles. But something you need to know about all of these is every weapon is good enough to get you through the game. There is no weapon that is genuinely awful that you should never use, although you might see speedrun data that would suggest otherwise. I know in the beta, for example, Switch Axe was performing very poorly in the beta, though it's supposed to get some buffs in the full game. But even still, it is viable enough that with the proper amount of skill, you can slay any monster in the game with even the worst weapon in the game, by speedrun standards anyway. But it's a lot more important to find a weapon that fits how you play the game, because while this is something not often talked about, everyone does have their own personal meta for weapons, the ones that work best for them and the ones that work the worst for them. And oftentimes, those personal metas are completely different than, say, the speedrun meta. Because of that, finding the weapon that best works for you is going to give you the best chance at defeating most monsters. But you don't have to just pick one weapon and be like, this is my main, I'm gonna play through the entire story with this. You don't have to do that. You can pick different weapons for different fights. Wilds is designed in such a way they want you to have at least 2 different weapons on you, because some monsters do counter particular weapons, but some weapons counter particular monsters as well. So think of the weapons more like a tool that you can use, instead of something you have to dedicate to. Another thing I would recommend, especially if you're a more casual type of player, is that you shouldn't try so hard to optimize hunt times. I know a lot of people consider hunt times a measure of skill, but I personally find it better to optimize overall time played instead, which for me that tends to be minimizing the amount of times that I cart. Again, this depends on how you want to view Monster Hunter, if you want to be more into like the speedrunner scene versus if you just want to casually play the game. I'm going to play the game casually, so that's why I'm not really going to try too hard to optimize hunt times. I feel good when I can get most monsters under 15 minutes. Some people feel like they need to get hunt times under 5 minutes to be good, so to each their own there. Next piece of advice I would give is you should explore the maps whenever you get access to them, because there are a lot of hidden secret things that you're going to need to find to unlock stuff sometimes. And especially when you're progressing through the story, things like bone piles as well as mining outcrops are very important to know the location of, in case you need those items to make particular gear. That's where exploration comes in. Don't just autopilot with your secret everywhere you go. Go actually look around. It'll be better for you if you do that. Another thing I would suggest, and this is something that more experienced players can do as well, I would recommend trying new things. Just play around with different armor sets or different weapon combinations, skill combinations, different mantles, because this game does have mantles again. Even using stuff that most people would consider to be bad, just try it for yourself, see how it feels. And who knows, maybe some of those things that are considered really bad may actually work well for you and how you play the game, and may fit into your personal meta. And the last piece of advice that I will give you is one that you're probably not going to understand until it happens to you. But Monster Hunter veterans will understand what I'm about to say. And that is, don't give up on hard fights. Monster Hunter is full of skill checks, because part of the game is to learn how to improve and develop your skills. So the Monster Hunter team intentionally designs certain monsters to be skill checks. And they'll typically teach you a certain thing that you need to improve on, which is why sometimes particular monsters are a skill check for some people, but not everyone. Because if somebody already has a particular skill set developed that works well against that monster, then it's not a problem. But if you don't have that particular skill set developed, that monster is going to show you have a flaw in how you play and that you need to effectively get good. The majority of the game is that. You will run into walls. But don't give up when you hit a wall. That is your opportunity to improve and to learn from your mistakes, learn how to do better. It's part of what makes Monster Hunter so satisfying and rewarding to play. And if that's not something that you like, I would highly recommend you not get Monster Hunter Wilds, because that's what most of the game is about. Sure, there's like other things you can do that are not based on that, but anytime you progress through the story, you have to hunt large monsters. The game's called Monster Hunter. That's the primary focus of the game. Some people can carry you if you use the SOS flare. That is definitely a thing. But if you cannot beat a particular monster solo, that means there is learning to be done. And I would suggest to you that you allow yourself to learn instead of, well, this monster's too hard, I'm just gonna SOS and let people carry me through it. Because Monster Hunter is one of the best games to teach mindsets. It's almost educational in that way. Who knew learning could be so much fun? Unless you're fighting a Latreon, that's not fun. That's just pain. But that's the advice that I have. I hope some of it is helpful. One more thing I want to talk about. If you do stick around and watch this channel, I'm going to try to approach the game from a more casual perspective. Play around with different builds that meta chasers would completely ignore, and just see what happens when you do try some of these off-meta, really bad, like armor sets and whatnot. May showcase a few of those, do some SOS stuff, but this is not a place to go for story spoilers. But if you haven't progressed through the story and seen every monster yet, you may see some monsters in my gameplay that you haven't fought yet. So yeah, this channel's gonna be kind of Monster Hunter focused for a while. Anyway, thank y'all so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy Monster Hunter.